പ്രളയവും ഉരുൾപൊട്ടലും ഉണ്ടാകുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ വീണ്ടും മാധവ് ഗാഡ്ഗിലിനെ ഓർക്കുന്നു. ഒരു കാലത്ത് അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ വാക്കുകൾ നമ്മൾ തള്ളിക്കളഞ്ഞു. ഇന്ന് അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ വാക്കുകൾ വേദവാക്യം പോലെ അംഗീകരിക്കേണ്ടി വരുന്നു. എന്തുകൊണ്ടാണ് മലയാളി ഇത്തരത്തിൽ പിന്തിരിപ്പനായത്? എന്താണ് ഇനിയൊരു പരിഹാരം? ഗാഡ്ഗിലിനോട് തന്നെ ചോദിച്ചറിയാം. Sir, again Kerala facing a disaster and a catastrophic rain has happened here, and the death toll of Kootikal landslide has been raised to more than 20. And I wish to bring your attention that one of the serious matter what I have to discuss with you is you have marked the Kootikal as the main place and the high sensitive place according to your report. So it is very sensitive, the landslides will happen there. That is your warning also. It was not followed by the authorities. So how do you comment on this, and what is your opinion on this?
Well, as I said, our report was prepared with considerable care and careful scientific evidence, areas which we labeled as highly sensitive ecologically. We had three categories of ecological sensitivity: highly sensitive, moderately sensitive, and low sensitivity. This area, as you are saying, is categorized as highly sensitive. So these are areas which are by and large with very heavy rainfall, with steep slopes, and with considerable natural vegetation which is being reduced. And we had said that in these highly sensitive areas, if the current spree of continuing a whole lot of interventions which would include not only rock quarrying but road construction of buildings on steep slopes, whole lot of such interventions if they go on, then and further reduction, of course, of the natural forest areas because of these activities, rock quarrying, if they will go on, then certainly you can expect serious problems which could include landslides. And apparently this is what is happening. I personally visited the 2018, it must have been, Puthumala landslide, and all these things were happening near Puthumala, which we had said should not be happening. There was, as we drove to Puthumala, all along there was road cutting, and for road cutting along the side of the roads for borrowing soil and so on, there were cuts where there were small landslides. All along several kilometers were full of small landslides, and everywhere on steep slope buildings were being constructed. We saw in many places natural forest was being cut again and again, and tea plantations were being set up. I mean, the whole lot of interventions which we said would be undesirable in these highly sensitive areas were going on. They were rampant, and the result was, of course, this landslide, Puthumala landslide. And who were the victims, at least at that landslide, and I understand last year's Pettumudi landslide also, and perhaps other landslides? The victims were tea garden laborers, the poorest segment of the society. They were forced to live in hutments at the bottom of this gorge. This is not a place where anybody should have been forced to live. These poorer people were forced to live at the bottom of the gorge, and these were the houses that were all buried under 6 feet of mud, we saw. So there were certainly people who were making money out of this. The tea estate owners were certainly are very wealthy people in Kerala. Somebody says they are a parallel government. The rock quarries that are going on, they make enormous number of amount of money. They are, most of them, illegal. They don't have the permission from the local gram panchayats. They very often don't have permission of the district collector also, and they are making enormous amount of money. And it is not that the rock quarries have to be right next to where the landslide started. Because when there are many rock quarries in the vicinity and with the kind of blasting that goes on and on, then the whole range becomes fragile. And it is likely that somewhere or else that fragility will give way and you will have landslide. So, yes, I mean, all these are events that were waiting to happen. It was the warning was very clear, and as I said, we had given that warning based on very careful scientific studies and objective organization of the information. So,
Sir, Kerala government is planning a silver line railway project. It is from southern end to the northern end of Kerala. It consumes a lot of rocks and all those things. Do you think there is a right way of planning? It is a right way of development that has to be followed by the Kerala in the present scenario?
see, I mean, why are you taking for granted that we must go on and on having railways and go on and having big highways? So in this is Kerala. I now live in Maharashtra. In our Konkan area also, same thing has happened, and the Konkan railway and the highways along the west coast highways, they have ruined the whole countryside, and people are in serious trouble. And what is so? I mean, why are these railway lines and these highways so precious that they can be allowed to destroy the environment, and we should bear the brunt of all this because this is what is to be worshipped. Why are you worshipping these railway lines and roads? I think it is sheer nonsense to go on saying that we must have this, we must have this. Why must you have all these destructive developments? I do not at all agree that you must have these destructive developments.
Sir, from the beginning itself, you have definitely stressed the point to initiate a Western Ghat Conservation Authority. There is no such move has been happened from the state government or any other authorities for that. Do you think it's necessary in this present condition because the Kerala is facing very much severe calamities now?
See, there are two aspects. There is an authority, and when our Western Ghat Ecology Expert Panel was set up, the mandate itself said that after our report is submitted, there would be an authority set up, and that authority would undertake further management. Yes, and we had said, of course, there should be, because that was anyway our mandate and it was desirable. Though we had very strongly recommended that it should not be a centralized authority but decentralized administration. But our report had very strongly stressed one more thing, that we have a democracy in which people are sovereign, and our democracy is not just that central governments and state governments. Our democracy is due, especially with the 73rd and 74th amendments, very clearly a democracy which has several tiers. The lowest tier is the Gram Panchayats or the Nagarpalikas, Mahanagarpalikas, and within the Nagarpalikas, Mahanagarpalikas, the wards, those are the first tier. They must also have important role in all decision making. And then the second tier maybe district level, third tier state level, fourth tier central level. We have strongly said that a bottom-up process of democratic decision making is a must. We had said that our report must immediately be translated in Malayalam and Kannada and Tamil and Marathi and Konkani, all the local languages, and made available. Discussions should be held from ground level up, from the level of the Gram Panchayats up, and then we should make good decisions. So it is not that setting up an authority, centralized authority, is the only answer. Let there be an authority but there must also be a process of bottom-up decision making, and Kerala state in particular has had very good tradition of this. I personally was also involved in 1996, 97, I think those were the years, when there was a people's planning campaign in Kerala. And through that people's planning campaign, village level, Gram Panchayat level development reports were generated throughout the state. And those reports should have been what would have should have guided further development. And this is the model. Our report also strongly recommended this decentralized decision making model of Kerala. There are other instances of the importance being recognized of local level decision. You have the well known case of the Plachimada village with its Coca-Cola plant. The Kerala High Court has held, very clearly held, that Gram Panchayats have the rights to protect the lives and livelihoods of their citizens. And if there is an activity which is against the citizens' well-being, Gram Panchayats can ban it. Then Kerala state legislature has unanimously passed a resolution that they should be awarded a very substantial uh, amount of compensation, which was also computed. I forget the figure, but it was in crores. So that compensation should have been paid to the Plachimara Gram Panchayat. That is, I think, 15 years ago. And from time to time, various political parties have promised justice to Plachimara. Nothing is being done. For example, right now, I would strongly say Kerala government should go ahead and instead of talking about spending money on all this infrastructure, do justice to the people of Plachimada. Give them this small amount of money, which is pittance compared to how much they are spending on this infrastructure. Why are they not doing this? This is what we are saying. We must have a bottom-up process, and we should not be worshipping these infrastructure projects. I think that is completely unjustified, in particular, given the kind of damage to the environment and damage to the local communities that these infrastructure projects are causing.
Sir, the reports are coming about the climate change and the global climate change, how global warming, all those things are happening. But the climate change has impacted very severely in Kerala, and we are at the threshold of the climate change in last 2 years before, and now we are at the climate change now, and its impacts now, and it is disasters now. What do you think about how we can manage and how we have to address the climate change that is being faced by Kerala, especially in the global scenario?
Certainly, see, there are also two aspects of climate change one must consider. Uh, there is this earth is certainly get hotter and hotter and angrier, if you would call it. So on this hot and angry earth, many things are happening. One clear change has been that the number of cyclones, the cyclonic activity has gone down in Bay of Bengal because of whatever balance, and has increased in the Arabian Sea. And you are now seeing Arabian Sea is hotter, Arabian Sea's level has risen, Arabian Sea is now experiencing very strong super cyclones as never before. From 1980 onwards, very good data, satellite based data is available. From that period, 2 years ago, we had the Nisarga super cyclone, which hit near Mumbai on Konkan coast. And then we had the Taukte cyclone, which has hit near the Gujarat coast. These are the two cyclones, super cyclonic cyclones, which ever were witnessed on the west coast since the good data became available. There are some historical references earlier, but there was no good data at that time. From 1980, it is very clear. Now, these cyclones, it is not they will hit only uh, Maharashtra and Kerala, Gujarat. They will certainly hit Goa and Karnataka and Kerala coast, and they will, for example, this Villingam port, which you are again saying is essential. It is very easy to visualize that one super cyclone will completely destroy this port. And I understand that it is to fulfill the requirements of stone metal for the port, that huge number of rock quarries are being uh, dug. So, with a single stroke of nature's wrath, this whole port could be destroyed. It is certainly possible to visualize this. So, in the long run, you cannot allow this destruction to go on. It will have very serious, very adverse impacts on the whole society. And to allow just a small number of people to make money through construction and quarrying, and permit to jeopardize the long term future of our society as a whole is certainly, to my mind, in every way undesirable.
Sir, you have stated 60% of forest cover to be retained in the environmentally sensitive areas and fragile areas. It is according to your report also. What is the rationale of stating such a 60% of vegetation on all those places such as environmentally fragile and sensitive zones? What do you think there is a rationale, and what is the rationale for that particular amount or a particular statistics?
No, no, it is all, the rationale has been very clearly stated in the report. There is a forest policy which the government of India has accepted, and it has never rejected that policy, which says that in the hill areas, something like that should be maintained under natural tree cover. So we were a government of India mandated panel, and the government of India's forest policy was part of what we had to take on board, except that that is what should be a norm. So that is one part of it. And as I said, this is very clearly explained, this logic in our report, why we are talking of this figure. But we also very clearly said that let us not have kind of a one code fits all kind of management. That is why we carefully selected the more highly vulnerable sensitive areas, medium and low, and we also took into account the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. National parks and wildlife sanctuaries have presumably been selected as highly ecologically desirable for ecological protection. So, what we have suggested are areas paralleling that level of ecological endowments. Uh, all this logic is very carefully worked out and fully stated in the report.
Sir, coming to the last question, it is about the disaster condition, disaster preparedness of Kerala. Do you think the disaster preparedness of Kerala is fit for the coming season, or do you think it is enough to manage the disaster maybe happen in the future, especially in the context of Kerala?
Now, this I have now not been had a chance to visit Kerala for last 2.5 years, so I cannot say on the ground. But as I understand, that disaster preparedness has two levels. One is immediate preparedness for quick action. Other is long-term preparedness to look after, avoid disasters. Obviously, the long-term preparedness to look after, avoid disasters is completely missing. It is not there at all. The short-term preparedness, I will not immediately comment on, except the news I have read in newspapers of the floods, I think 2 or 3 years ago, maybe, where it was not the official agency which was able to really take care. But it was the fishermen of Kerala. There are big headlines at that time. Fishermen are the real heroes. They got where the official tips could not get. And it is these fishermen, amongst other people, who are being, in many ways, their livelihoods are being destroyed. These big ports, for instance, they are destroying these fishermen's livelihoods. But when the time came, they rose to the rescue of people. That's what was being said all along. So even there are questions whether it's a kind of a proper inclusive preparedness involving all organs of the society or not. Perhaps there is not. You might be more familiar. There is a very good group today, Mirachil River Protection Committee, which is trying to get people involved, panchayats involved in managing possible future disasters. That is the kind inclusive organization that I feel is the appropriate one in every way, as I said, in our democratic country.
So thank you very much, sir, for your immediate response on this condition, and we would be thankful with you. Janam TV will be thankful with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Ellavarikkum namaskaram.